Hey, happy Monday, 49er faithful. This is Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. And to my side here is Rob Shoe from The Left Shoe on YouTube. How you doing today, Rob?
I'm doing very well, Jack. I am doing very well. Now that the season has finally come to an actual close, I feel like we can move forward and look at 2021 as its own season in its entirety now.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And an interesting few days since we spoke last. I know we were together on Friday over on your channel, and a lot of news broke over the weekend between Saturday and Sunday around the 49ers quarterback situation. I think everybody feels pretty confident in who the quarterback's going to be next year, most likely. But there'd always been a little bit of rumors around what's going to happen with Jimmy Garoppolo. And uh, on Sunday, there were a couple of different reports. First off, there was a report that the 49ers are going to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo still by right around the start of the new league year, which is a month from, which really kind of kicks off. It's not quite a month from today. It's actually the 16th as the start of the new league year, but teams are going to be able to start negotiating on the 14th. So it kind of gives us a timetable as to when Garoppolo is likely to no longer be a 49er. And then also there was a report that came out from, I believe it was The Athletic, that said that there's an executive who believes that the Washington Commanders, I almost called them the football team because I forgot they're called the Commanders, would possibly be willing to give up a first round draft pick for Jimmy Garoppolo. What are your thoughts on both of those things?
Well, first and foremost, it's so great how the NFL has just created this year-round news cycle. I mean, it's really something else. It's Super Bowl weekend, and yet all of the 24/7 NFL reporters are coming in with these little juicy tidbits about all of the contending teams, right? Just a little teaser to get us all excited about it. And when we talk about the San Francisco 49ers being pretty settled in their quarterback situation, you even have the Trey Lance interview that comes out with Rich Eisen, where he indicates that yes, it is the plan moving forward. And then he corrects himself and says, that's my plan moving forward, that I will be the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. That's how I'm operating in this one. Still remains to be seen whether the San Francisco 49ers are, in fact, going to be operating underneath that same expectation. But the writing is on the wall, right? I think coming into this weekend, the vast majority of 49er faithful had come around to this idea that Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be traded. And I think it's, regardless of how your feeling is on the qualifications of Jimmy Garoppolo and his ability to lead the San Francisco 49ers, the reason for me that I didn't even need to hear this report of Jimmy getting traded to know Jimmy's getting traded is you can't go another season and hope that you can hold it all together in the way that the San Francisco 49ers did this year. If you try to keep Jimmy Garoppolo around for one more season with he and Lance in the same locker room, keep everyone together throughout the ups and downs of a season, to me, that has the potential to be a hot mess.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. It doesn't make sense to do that. I mean, we've known this for a while, and I know we've had conversations, and I've had other conversations with other folks here on YouTube where I've said you can make the case for Garoppolo coming back from a salary cap standpoint of this and that or the other things happens, but never expected it to really occur. I should say I haven't really expected it to occur since towards the middle of December.
Right.
Prior to that point, I thought that there might be a little bit more likelihood. But then really around the time once I saw Lance start in week 17, you saw what the changes were with him. At that point, you knew it was just a matter of time for Jimmy Garoppolo to not be the starting quarterback any longer with the 49ers. So I like what you said, though. If they were to try to keep him around here for one more year, I do think that it would become a little bit of a hot mess. And I think that Garoppolo would start to be more resentful of the situation, which is why I don't think he'd want to even agree to anything that would allow him to come back anyway.
Do you anticipate that there will be any news about Jimmy Garoppolo between now and the 14th, which of next month, which is the beginning of that legal tampering window, as you indicated? The actual start to free agency will be on the 16th of March. Do you anticipate any news coming out about Jimmy Garoppolo having any surgery to reattach that torn section of his ligament within his thumb? Or do you believe he's just going to rest it and will be good to go come free agency?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because they asked him that. He's been asked that question and he didn't give an answer really. It's something that they're looking at was really kind of what he said. So I would see. I would think that a team that's acquiring him would want to make sure that he's physically able to go, and you would think, I don't know if you can have a torn ligament in your thumb that isn't going to be able to is going to all of a sudden reattach if you don't have surgery. So I would think that he's would have to have surgery before a team wants to move forward with him.
Mm. Yeah, in that case, you would think that the news that comes out about the trade, unlike the Stafford trade, where he was completely healthy and there was really no mystery there, and that went down, what, late January last year, that you would think Jimmy Garoppolo's news could break significantly closer to that March 14th deadline, which is unfortunate because it just gives us too much time to talk about Jimmy G as a part of the 49ers, as opposed to just letting the man go and wishing him the best.
Yeah, I think that the discussion's going to continue to be there, and we're going to keep talking about what they're going to get for him, what they're not going to get for him, and everything like that. There's a lot. The injury obviously is one of the pieces that comes into play here. I think Aaron Rodgers and Russ Wilson. I think those two come into play here a little bit as well, because that's their availability to other teams is going to play a piece in this, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see how this whole thing shapes up with all these quarterbacks, as it's not just Jimmy Garoppolo that we're dealing with here.
No, and you would think that those two first dominoes would be the ones to fall, because if you're in the market for a quarterback, wouldn't you rather have one of the best options available? But I also do openly speculate about a team that may wish to avoid the circus of those top tier quarterbacks and just want to get a deal done before the musical chair starts to slow down, right? At some point, somebody's going to be left standing in this thing. And there could be a team that says to themselves, listen, we don't really think we're contenders for Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers. It would take a miracle for us to get that deal done. Jimmy Garoppolo is pretty straightforward. So it would be interesting to me to openly wonder if some team doesn't swoop in just to take their name out of the running, just to lock down their quarterback position prior to getting down to where it's just Jimmy Garoppolo. Because to the question of the first rounder and whether the 49ers get that in return for Jimmy Garoppolo, to me, it comes down to a bidding war. Unless there's a bidding war, I cannot see a scenario in which the San Francisco 49ers get that first round pick. But if there are two teams left standing and the music starts to slow down, that's when teams get irrational.
True. And it's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing plays out, because the 49ers are currently over the cap. And so going into free agency period, they're going to need to make some moves. So it's either going to be and I do believe that even if they move Garoppolo off of their books, he still can't come off their books until after the first. So there's I think there might have to be a move of another player, not necessarily a move of another player, but a move of another player's contract to get them under the cap even before they move on from Garoppolo. And I would think the 49ers are going to want to try to do that, not play around with the roster any more than they have to, or with contracts any more than they have to, until they finally get Garoppolo away. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly they're able to get this done.
Would you anticipate? So that is an interesting angle, that the 49ers may need to move some money prior to that trade actually going through of Garoppolo, so that bookkeeping wise, they may be forced into doing one of these restructures. Do you still see a potential contract like a Jimmy Ward or an Eric Armstead as the most likely contracts to get moved in that not move, but adjusted in that scenario?
I would think that those are the top two, right? Because those are I think those are both guys that they really want to keep around. They're productive, and so especially with Armstead and his availability, he's a guy who you can maybe move and add another year to his deal and to lower his cap number this year to help the team out. So a year or two, whatever you want to do there. Right. So I do think that you're going to see most likely at least one of those two get a deal done.
I know that some people are not wild on Eric Armstead's contract. I'm completely comfortable with it at this point. I would be good with either one of those guys getting an additional year on their deal and spreading out some of that cap hit so that it gives the 49ers the flexibility that they need. To me, both will be around next year and the year prior, so it wouldn't be a shock to extend either one.
Yeah, I agree. Same here for me. And then staying on the Jimmy Garoppolo topic, I know it says a first round pick for Jimmy, but where do you think that he might go?
I mean, my top pick for Jimmy Garoppolo has been and continues to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just see it as a cultural fit within what their team sort of looks to build. I see it as a skill set fit. And more importantly, I look at the teams that are going to want to bring in Jimmy Garoppolo are those that don't really want a bridge quarterback because they don't have that next answer. They want in between a bridge quarterback and a project quarterback, right? They want sort of that happy marriage where they can keep winning this year. And to me, the Pittsburgh Steelers are set up like that. The Washington Commanders are a half a step away from where I believe the Pittsburgh Steelers to be. But to me, those are much more likely landing scenarios than some of these teams that are coming off of worse records or are in the process of a rebuild.
Yeah, the only thing that I will say on the Washington piece is it'll be interesting to see if the 49ers are willing to keep Jimmy Garoppolo in the NFC. Unless they're getting a first-round pick for him, like what the rumor has been, or
Right.
was over the weekend. Will they be willing to trade him within the NFC and have to deal with him? I understand what fans say, but is that a guy that they'd want to play against, down the road?
My gut says that they wouldn't take that too much into consideration. My gut says that Jimmy is the level of quarterback where it's not that you take him for granted. It's not that you look at that game on the schedule and say to yourself, it's easy. But he's also not the type of quarterback that instills fear, right? If you're the Green Bay Packers and you do somehow end up moving on from Aaron Rodgers, there should be a healthy fear in your mind of sending him to someone like the San Francisco 49ers, because it's entirely possible, maybe not probable, but entirely possible he wins multiple Super Bowls with them and you have considerable egg on your face. I'm just not sure that teams look at Jimmy Garoppolo in that same way. Would you, if you were the San Francisco 49ers, hesitate dealing him inside the division if you like the compensation package coming back?
Not if I'm getting a first round. If the only way that I'm going to get a first round pick for him is to send him to a team in the NFC, then I'm doing it.
Yeah.
But if I have to choose between an AFC team and an NFC team, and both of them are going to give me second round picks or third round, whatever the round is, and those picks are close, then I'm not so worried about that. I'm going to take the better of the two deals. But if somebody's going to give me a first, I wouldn't mind. I mean, especially if Washington is going to give me a pick at 11, shoot, that's fantastic. That puts 49ers almost where they were last year. And even if the 49ers have to trade a pick to as part of it, right? Just trade Garoppolo and your, one of your third round picks that you have, because you're going to have, I think, 3 of them now, or 2 of them for sure. Move one of those with Garoppolo to get a first. I would do that if I had to.
Yeah, I would too. Absolutely. I mean, quite honestly, I would consider throwing in a second round pick to get back into that first round.
True. The one place that I will say that is going to be interesting to keep an eye on here is the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts. It came out shortly after their loss to Jacksonville when they had their postseason press conference. The general manager would not commit to Carson Wentz for another year. There was reports over this weekend, I believe it was yesterday, from Chris Mortensen, that it's highly unlikely or very unlikely that Wentz will be with the Colts next year. So the Colts are going to be looking for a quarterback, and I think this is a landing spot that would fit really well for Jimmy Garoppolo, given what he's looking for. If they can make the numbers work, I really think that the Colts might be the spot where he ends up.
Yeah, I would have to pencil that in right behind my other 2 favorite destinations because of that same. I mean, I might even have to put them a notch above the Washington Commanders because of what I stated my primary reasoning for believing teams would be interested in Jimmy Garoppolo when they are at that level where they just need consistent quarterback play in order to continue winning and stay relevant. And the Indianapolis Colts seem to fit that bill. I'm a little surprised at the back and forth in sticking with Carson Wentz versus not sticking with Carson Wentz. It doesn't strike me as an organization that truly knows what they have there. And I get that because Carson Wentz is a conundrum a bit, much like Jimmy Garoppolo, where he is a polarizing figure. And when healthy, he can put together a string of pretty impressive games. But also capable of doing some things that are less than stellar and causing you to believe that you can't necessarily take the next step with him.
Yeah, I think it fits it fits perfectly for Garoppolo. I think, when you look at what Indianapolis has, they have the running game with
Mm-hmm.
with Jonathan Taylor. That fits really well with Garoppolo. They have a good defense there as well, and they just need a quarterback who can make some plays for you. And I think Jimmy Garoppolo is every bit as good as Carson Wentz. I think he's probably better. I think it's interesting too because the Indianapolis made a big investment to get Wentz coming off of a year in which he was benched for Jalen Hurts. So it's kind of an interesting scenario there compared to what Garoppolo is coming from, getting the 49ers to the NFC Championship. Obviously, help with the running game and defense and special teams and everything play the role into that. But it'll be fun to continue to track this. I think we're going to be doing it for about another month now, and definitely be something to keep an eye on. That's for sure.
Yeah, I do wonder how Indianapolis's fan base would welcome in Jimmy Garoppolo, whether they would see the differences between the two game sets, between Carson Wentz or Jimmy Garoppolo. In that, just because this fan base went through a tumultuous 2021 season with Carson Wentz, you wonder if they would have an aversion to a player that many see as a similar skill set. Many see in the same tier of quarterbacks. Many see similar flaws in the individual, with struggling to stay healthy, with a few too many chances and turnovers for the type of game that they put on the line. I believe, as you do, that front offices would probably see the differences between the two, but you would wonder if the fan base would welcome in Jimmy Garoppolo within Indianapolis.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to watch how that plays out everywhere that he goes because is Jimmy, from what I've seen, it doesn't seem like there's people around the NFL, at least on NFL Twitter, that think very highly of, and not just in the 49ers realm, who think highly of Garoppolo. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out when he does get moved.
Most definitely.
The reception of that for sure. Moving on, last night we had a pretty interesting contest between the Rams and the Bengals. I had predicted earlier in the day that the Bengals would win 26-23 over the Rams. My prediction wasn't that far off. I hit the number for the Rams. I just missed it by 6 for the Bengals. What were some of your takeaways from the game yesterday?
Well, let's be honest that if it weren't for the last sack by a half a second, if you will, Jamar Chase was about to break open on that 4th and 1, and you would like to think that he would have, Joe Burrow would have hit him on that if it weren't for the Rams pass rush and the Bengals' inability to pass block. It was, credit to the Rams. I thought that Odell Beckham Jr. came through for them in the first half before the knee injury. You look at Von Miller coming through in the second half of the game, the entire Rams pass rush, Aaron Donald coming through in the second half of the game, and then Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp on that final drive. I will say that, a couple of plays going the other way for the Bengals could have turned this game, but I have to take my hat off and tip my cap to the Los Angeles Rams for all those players that they assembled in this super team coming together and being the difference in a very close matchup.
Yeah, before I get started, hey, Andrew, good to see you. He says, sorry, I'm late, Jack. Long day at work. Hopefully, after your long day at work, it's amazing after a long day at work, you want to look at these two faces. But yeah, the game. I liked I had a good time watching the game yesterday. It was really interesting, the back and forth between these two teams.
Yes,
it did the loss of Beckham really did seem to kind of really change the way that this game went. Right, just the Rams offense looked like they were moving the ball much better than they were able to do in the second half throughout. But the whole key for me, and it's been key with this Rams team throughout the playoffs. They have Matthew Stafford. We're going to get to Matthew Stafford in a little bit, but the reason that they won the Super Bowl, other than Matthew Stafford making the plays, was their defense was just dominant throughout the postseason. The defense is what got them there, as well as Matthew Stafford making some plays. But if you go back, I went and took a look at it today. The Rams defense held opponents to only 9 conversions on 46 attempts on third down.
Wow.
over the course of four games in the postseason. The Cardinals only didn't get one. They held without any, and the 49ers, Buccaneers, and the Bengals each got three. So there were a total of 9 for 46 on third down. And that, along with the fact that the Rams continued to try to run the ball even yesterday, and you heard people kind of downplaying the play calling of Sean McVay and saying that it was his responsibility for the game was so close, what have you. I like the way that McVay ran the offense. I understand they weren't getting yards, but they continued to try to run, and by doing that, you have the defense who's standing up on third down repeatedly, allows you to do those kind of things. And the other thing that running the ball did in that defense is it gave the Rams the time of possession advantage throughout. They had the first 3 games of the postseason, they were at 35 minutes of possession time. Yesterday they were just over 30, and they ran more plays than their opponent in all 3 games. So I think it was just a really good showing from McVay in managing the clock and managing the game throughout. And that's one of the things that I've always enjoyed about McVay compared to Kyle Shanahan. One of the knocks I've always put on Kyle Shanahan is the game management, and I felt like McVay managed the game really well, especially over the last 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah, and a game like that where it is so close, all of those play calling decisions matter, right? I mean, the decision to stick with the run, even though the run was most definitely not working, allowed the Rams to keep it close, allowed the Rams to keep the Bengals in the types of defensive fronts that they wanted them in order to unleash that final attack, right? And so, to me, it definitely was something where I had to take my hat off to the Rams defense in the second half. And part of that has to be reflected on the Bengals and their roster building decisions, failing to protect Joe Burrow. It does strike me as you could argue they wouldn't even be in the playoffs if they hadn't selected Jamar Chase, right? I think that's a fair statement to make. But you also wonder if they had Penei Sewell on the line, would that have been enough in this game? And you could argue it back and forth. Certainly going forward, what is clear to me is if they want to extend the lifespan of Joe Burrow's career within the NFL, they are absolutely going to need to protect him. Because, the Bengals, after that initial score in the second half, failing to score on the final 5 drives, being sacked on 4 of those during that span. That was, I think, as I looked it up, just the second most times that someone has been sacked. Yes, Marcus Mariota was sacked 7 times in a half of a playoff game, but that was the second most all time. So when you can't protect your quarterback, when you're allowing Aaron Donald and Von Miller to get after him, it's hard to keep your foot on the gas.
Yeah, I think I saw something last night where when it comes to the sacks, the 7 sacks that he had last night were tied with, I think might have been Roger Staubach in Super Bowl 10 for the most sacks by a quarterback. I know it was Super Bowl X. I'm not sure if it was. I'm pretty sure it would have been Staubach. But yeah, I agree with you because we saw that it affected the game yesterday, right? He was sacked. It looked like he hurt his knee.
Yeah,
and it didn't seem like it affected him for a couple of series there, and then he kind of got it together at the end on the last possession. So there was definitely some of that for sure. Also I think you need to look at what the Rams were able to pull off this year with Matthew Stafford. They went out, they made the move to get Stafford and bring him in, and Stafford made it pay off in the postseason. He had he had them up big in Tampa. They saw the lead go away, and then he made 2 big throws in the fourth quarter at the end of the game there against Tampa to get them in the field goal range. Against the 49ers, he made big throws throughout the second half to get them back from a 10-point deficit to win that game. And then yesterday we saw him make big throws leading the way down before he throws a touchdown to Kupp in the end zone. So Matthew Stafford I think you need to give him some praise for sure.
No doubt. I mean, 15-play, 72-yard drive, right? That's the kind of drive that when you're describing this Super Bowl, people are going to tell that tale. And we will quickly gloss over the chance that Joe Burrow had to put his name in the NFL history books. But he had every opportunity to grow the legend of his own version of Joe Cool. But yes, a tip of the cap to Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp coming through in the clutch. Saw this one as well. In the fourth quarter during the playoffs, when Stafford targeted Kupp, he was 12 for 12 for 208 yards, 9 first downs, and 2 touchdowns. I mean,
Yeah.
they were electric. When you look at the final drive for the Rams, and he targeted Kupp 4 times for 39 yards and a touchdown. It was obvious. It was one of those scenarios where it's like, hey, it's going to be me to Kupp. See if you can stop us. And nobody could.
That sounds real similar to Joe Montana in Super Bowl 23 between him and Jerry Rice. I think they had over 12 catches, close to 200 yards or something like that in that game. And that was just one game, not even the playoffs. So definitely a good shot in the arm there by Stafford. And the last couple of weeks of the postseason, Matthew Stafford did a really good job of being an arsonist early on and then turned into a fireman at the end, didn't he?
Yes, he did. There were certainly some instances that could have ended the Rams' postseason berth, right? I mean, people like to say that Jaquiski Tart interception that could have been would have sealed that one. I'm not prepared to say that, much like I'm not prepared to say that the touchdown pass that could have been to Emmanuel Sanders would have won us the Super Bowl. I think both of those games would have played out differently, but you never know. He certainly threw up some gifts that if any of those one possession games had gone the other way, we would be talking about Matthew Stafford in a much different light. We wouldn't be talking about possible Hall of Fame. We'd be talking about can't do it in the clutch. And it's the difference between 1 or 2 freaking plays.
Yeah. And it's crazy because the first interception, it's a bad throw. It's underthrown. It's third down. You're just chucking it up, hoping for the best. The second one was a little bit was costly to them, in that it cost them 3 points and it made it a 7-point game. It wasn't a good throw. It was off the mark just a little bit, bounced off the receiver's hands. It shouldn't have been an interception, but because of the inaccuracy on the throw and then the receiver's issue, it bounces and it's a pick, and that helps with the lead. And he did the same thing 2 weeks prior against the 49ers, right? He opens up the game, the second possession, with an interception in the end zone, takes points off the board, and the game should have been over with, or close to being over with. Obviously, can't say it was going to be over, but the game's going to play out completely different if Jaquiski Tart just catches the ball instead of dropping it. So again, it's that whole, I don't like the narrative. I think it's an awful narrative. That's why I brought it up. It's the whole, the whole thing with Staff, because you can do this with all these quarterbacks throughout. If you're just watching one game in a weekend, or maybe three games, whatever, you can pick it out almost in a game. Where a quarterback makes a mistake, and that's, if you don't have a comeback if the quarterback has played perfect the whole game,
right?
And so that was definitely a piece of it yesterday with Stafford. He played well. Got to give him props because he made the plays, and I was joking with what I said to start off with. But
it fascinates me though that each individual fan base sort of obsesses over this with their own quarterback. Whereas if you watch another team and you watch another quarterback, you're willing to forgive those same mistakes that are commonplace in any NFL game. But when it is your quarterback and when it is a mistake that they tend to repeat on any sort of a regular basis, we hyper focus on that and start to tear down the individual. It's a very strange phenomenon within the fan bases of the NFL that there can be disdain for a particular mistake that your quarterback makes. That's very commonplace around the league, that most quarterbacks make within the league.
Yeah. Familiarity breeds contempt, they say.
Yes, it does.
So that's definitely a piece of it. And before we jump over to the next topic, I do want to hit on the super chat real quick from that Niner guy. This goes back to our previous topic a little bit. He says, late to class, but apparently Wilson said earlier today that he is planning on staying in Seattle. So it looks like he is out of the trade market, leaving it with just Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Watson. Plays to the 49ers' advantage, I would think.
Yeah. The other thing that I read today was around Rodgers and the conversations that he's been having with the Packers, and read, admittedly, 2 competing stories. One with an executive that is doubling down on his assertion that Aaron Rodgers will not be within Green Bay. And that was the gentleman who was with the Packers front office for a period of time. It's escaping me which NFL exec that is at this very moment, but predicting that Aaron Rodgers will be back, that he'll be the highest paid quarterback in the league for the Packers next season versus, believing that he's on his way out and that there's no hope for Aaron Rodgers within the Packers organization and that, it's either he retires or he finds somewhere else. So to me, I believed Rodgers last year when he announced it at the draft. Shame on me. I thought he was not going to back down the least, right? I thought he was committed to his strategy and there's no way he was bluffing. And then it turned out he was bluffing. And so this year, I'm not believing any of these guys until they hold the line and force their teams to trade them. To me, the Deshaun Watson one, that seems likely to happen just because the Texans need to get something out of it at some point. But Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, until I see them in another uniform, I'm not believing it.
I agree. That's kind of where I am. I mean, who knows? We heard it all last offseason. We heard it. Russell Wilson was supposed to be traded last year, right?
Right.
That was the talk, and it never happened. Rodgers, so it's all the same guys. It's all basically the same guys. We're just throwing Jimmy Garoppolo into the ring now. So, jumping over, Wanda, see you over there in the comment section. Let's talk a little bit about, last night you had the Rams. They went out and they spent some big time capital, financial and trade and draft capital to go out and put this team together. And there were a number of comments that I ran across on Twitter about ring chasers and not how they don't. A lot of 49ers fans don't seem to be very happy about the fact that the Rams won the Super Bowl with the way that they did it, and they chased some rings and to get it. I don't have a problem with chasing rings. That's kind of what the game's about, right?
It is. I go back and forth on this one. I mean, I like it when my team does it. And I know that is really a cop-out, but that's the reality. That when the San Francisco 49ers put together teams that have won it all, I'm okay with that. I am just fine with it. I have taken shots at the Rams, limited because I know myself to be okay with it when it happens for my team. And so I don't want to be too big of a hypocrite. But I feel like there's a difference between sort of getting your core together and then adding some pieces around the fringes versus an all-out super team push like the LeBron to Miami scenario. That, to me, felt forced. I got to hand it to the Rams that other than potentially critiquing them for bringing in the quarterback because of how much the quarterback means to an organization, I feel like they had the core of the roster there together, and they brought in a couple of upgrades at key position. Yes, quarterback being one of them, and you could argue that's the superstar position of the NFL, and therefore it was a complete rebuild. But I would say they fit into that mold of adding to what they already had in the mix, and so I respect the play.
Yeah, I respect it 100% myself. And then Rob says, hello, Jack and Rob. Hey, Rob, good to see you. For me, I think the thing when if you're a 49ers fan and you're complaining about what the Rams did this year, I think you need to take a second. I understand that there's a lot of folks who follow the 49ers who are younger than 30 years old. If you're younger than 30 years old, you probably don't remember how the 49ers won their last Super Bowl because you were only 3 when it happened. I know at 3 years old, I didn't know what the heck was going on in an NFL game. So, but obviously back in 1994, the 49ers were probably one of the best teams that money could buy.
Yes.
They obviously they already had Steve Young, but they went out and brought in long before you had Deion Sanders on the roster because he didn't join the team to start with. They brought in player after player after player that year. They brought in Bart Oates for the offensive line. They brought in Ken Norton Jr. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's the linebacker. I'm
Gary
blanking
Plummer.
on Gary Plummer. I mean, there was a lot of guys on that team that were free agents. That was the start of free agency, right? 1994 was the start of free agency as we know it. And the 49ers said, we're going all in. We got to get past these Cowboys. And they went and they gave up, they mortgaged their future in a way, which didn't happen for quite a while, but they went after it and they definitely took a big gamble, brought in a large number of free agents and won the Super Bowl as a result. So, and I think if you're a 49er fan, it goes back even before 1994, right? The spanning of Eddie DeBartolo is well known as to be one of the reasons why there's a salary cap in the NFL now.
Right. Right. I mean, this was a strategy that the 49ers found to work and took advantage of it. And the league saw them taking advantage of it and put a stop to it, right? The salary cap was the kibosh on Eddie D's pursuit of global domination. And so, yes, to me, as much as I disliked the mercenary nature with which Deion Sanders left our organization the next season, he was my hero in coming to the team in '94. I used to love watching him jog around the exterior of Candlestick before the games with that headband on. I mean, he had pregame drip before pregame drip was ever a thing, right? He and Jerry on the same team, clean, pressed, good looks. Those uniforms of '94, forget about it. But yeah, certainly you have big key free agents coming in that push the 49ers over the cusp. I think you could make a very compelling argument that would be hard to refute, that without Deion Sanders on that team, regardless of all the quality free agents that they brought in, without Deion Sanders on Michael Irvin, I don't know that we win that championship game. I don't know that we advance to the Super Bowl in '94.
Yeah, no, I don't think they do, because if you remember that year, even they started off slow. It took them, their offense took a while to get going. Some of that was some of the changes on the offensive side of the ball, but it took them a while to get going on offense. Their defense was kind of struggling, and then they brought in Dion, and things kind of started to take off from there. But and you're right, 100% on a lot of different things that you just hit on. And yeah, Dion used to lay his uniform out like all he would have to do is jump up in the air and land on it, slide into it, because it was all laid out on the ground before he put it on. But so if there's anybody on that team that knew how to look good, it was Dion. That's the first time I ever remember hearing, if you look good, you play good. And That was with Dion back that season, And even before Dion and before that team, though, look back at like the 1989 team that won the Super Bowl, blowing out the Broncos there. And that team was loaded. It was so loaded that their third string quarterback would go on to be a Pro Bowl quarterback 5-6 years later for the Kansas City Chiefs and win 13 games. I mean, that's how loaded those teams were back in those days.
Is that Bono?
Yeah, Steve Bono, right? I mean,
there was a time, Jack, I got to admit to this. There was a time where, it was going back between Steve Young and Steve Bono, where my brother and I took sides. My brother said, I want Steve Young to be the next quarterback, and I said I wanted Steve Bono. So that's how bad I was at that point in time. Now, granted, I was like 11 at that point, but I was on the Bono bandwagon.
I could understand how you would be on the Bono bandwagon, because you got to remember, in '91, that was the first year without Joe.
I'm telling
you. And Steve got hurt, and they weren't doing very well. And Steve got hurt, and Bono went in and went 5-1, and then Young came back and became the guy that we all remember who Steve Young, think of him as, but he wasn't that guy at the beginning of that year. And so I could understand why 11-year-old Rob was all in on Steve Bono.
Yes, I was. Yes, he's a good guy too. I got the chance to went to the Hall of Fame induction for Montana and Lott, and rode to the ceremony on the same bus as him, and he had everybody in stitches. I mean, he was telling stories. It was great. He was a good dude.
Oh yeah, no. Have you watched the Joe Montana documentary?
No, not yet. I need to set aside some time and get on that.
Okay. So I'm not done with it. I've started watching it, more of it, over the weekend. I've got two of them left to go, and I've got to say real quick, the whole Steve Joe thing. We're just kind of getting into it now. Man, I was always a Joe guy. And then quick story from when I was a senior in high school. That was the year that Joe was hurt and Steve was the guy. And I kept saying, so anyway, I'm walking out of football practice one day. Me and my backup quarterback had stayed back to play some catch. We almost got into a fight on the practice field because he was a Steve Young guy and I was a Joe Montana guy. Nice. And I was not happy with it. And then finally I just walked off. He was yelling at me from behind, like trying to, calm me down. I didn't even want to have any of him for the rest of the night. But, the one thing from that whole Joe documentary that I found hilarious, I think it comes up in like episode 3, was he would go into every stadium, because back in those days that was before the tablets, so they'd pick up the phone, right, and have the talk. And so he'd go into every stadium and he would try to see if he could get an outside line. And he found one time. I don't know where it was, and he calls his Jennifer, who ends up being his wife. And she's like, "What are you doing? Where are you calling me from?" He's like, "I'm on the sideline." She's like, why are you calling me? He's like, "They had an outside line." And he's in the middle of a game, when and it's hilarious to think about, right? Because we watch these games, fans are so intense, and they think that these guys got to be like so focused, laser focused at all times that they're on the field. This guy's making a phone call to his wife, hangs up the phone, and then runs out and probably throws a touchdown pass. Just amazing.
I love that. And that and the John Candy stories, though, do indicate someone who's those moments are just not too big for them, right? That they are casual in those moments. That it's nothing big. Just doing my thing. And that mindset, I did see the same. Admittedly, as much as I'm old school and like Joe Cool's, Joe Montana, I do see that same trait in Joe Burrow. And quite honestly, after watching him yesterday in a way that I don't think I had in previous games or previous matchups, including the game against the San Francisco 49ers, you really do have to appreciate it. And having watched some quarterbacks of previous generations with incredible talent, Dan Marino comes to mind, I openly wonder if a guy that talented will actually get another shot. And it's wild to me to consider that someone as good as he is, like this could be as close as he gets. But in this instance, just pretty special to watch. And he has that type of attitude where the moment didn't seem too big for him.
Yeah, no, I agree. There was definitely a little bit of a Joe Cool to him. I wasn't going to go there when he threw the touchdown pass at the beginning of the second half, but so instead I went go Joe with the the LSU go
right
in front of it. But yeah, no, one of these days we're going to have to come on here. We're going to have to talk some old school 49er stuff because you need to watch that documentary, get that in so that we can have some conversations, and that'd be a fantastic, lot of fun to talk about that.
Yeah, most definitely.
And then Wanda's not happy with me. She says that, Jack, you still like Joe over Steve, just like you like that crummy Mac over Trey area. Well, what are we going to say? I mean, Joe won 4 Super Bowls. Steve won 1. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I side with you on the Joe over Steve just because that was my hero growing up. I would put Jerry Rice above both of them as far as ultimate favorite player, but favorite quarterback, I have to go Joe Montana, but thankfully we do not agree on the Trey versus Mac argument. I would take Trey.
Yeah, we're gonna have to come back to this topic in another show because I think it would be a lot of fun for you to watch that and then have this discussion because I in watching the show and I understand where Walsh was coming from and why Walsh made the trade when he made it for Young, everything about it. It's very interesting, and I think we can have a Joe versus Steve discussion and even can kind of turn that into a little bit of what the 49ers may get when Trey Lance takes over. I think we can have that discussion down the road. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Real quick, one other topic that I didn't hit you up on, but we'll make this one quick. We'll try to. We'll see. But, the 49ers, did I save it? No, maybe I didn't. Here, let me put it in real quick. The 49ers, they hired a head coach at the same time as the Rams. And one of them has now been to the Super Bowl twice, and the other one's only been to the Super Bowl once. So if you were going to take a look at Sean McVay versus Kyle Shanahan, kind of what are your thoughts on those two?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to do a direct comparison because I think most people would admit that Sean McVay walked into a better situation with the Los Angeles Rams. I mean, when Kyle Shanahan joined the San Francisco 49ers, if you look at the talent on that 2017 team, it was pretty brutal. Now, I do think that the Rams deserve credit for the way in which they built their roster, for having pushed all their chips into the middle and gambling and allowing it to pay off. A direct comparison is tough for me. What I will say is I give credit to the Rams. I give credit to Sean McVay. I am impressed with the risks that they took in order to get to where they are. I enjoy the exuberance that McVay has on the sideline. I appreciate the way in which he simplifies the offense in a way that Kyle Shanahan seems to go the opposite, and at times it has worked out to hurt the 49ers in how complicated some of their decisions are toward the end of high-pressure games, in my humble opinion. So I give credit to Sean McVay. I look up to him as a coach. I think he should be as sought after as he is. But I don't see that as a negative reflection on Kyle Shanahan. And I don't look down on Kyle Shanahan for what he has achieved, nor what he has failed to achieve in getting very close, but not cresting in those two instances.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit hard to compare them completely. Their time with the team, they were different, right? The Rams were much closer to being a good team when McVay took over. There, I think they were, obviously they had Mister 8-8 was their head coach before he took over,
Right.
right? So they were always in the running. They had a pretty good group, so he had a little bit of a head start there. And then Shanahan's definitely caught up to him over these last few years. The one thing that I will say though is that even in McVay's worst year, which was 2019, they were still pretty good. They were 9-7. They didn't make the playoffs. They missed out by a game, but they were still pretty good. Whereas when the 49ers have struggled and had their injuries, um, they've been bad. But
Yes.
at the same time, they never, even as bad as Jared Goff was, it's still better than what the 49ers got when Garoppolo was down. So I mean, it goes back and forth. And I will say this about these two men. I've always enjoyed the fact with McVay that he tends to overrun the ball, meaning that he sticks with the running game, whether it's he's hitting chunk plays or it's struggling.
Right.
And and he did that again yesterday. And people, like I said earlier in the show, were kind of rough on him, saying that he kept the game closer than it needed to be and so on. But I felt like he was playing to the strength of his team, which is his defense, and he was playing to this, trying to not make it all about Matthew Stafford and put everything on his shoulders, especially once Odell Beckham went down. It seemed like it took them a little while to get back into their plan, kind of figure things out because he was such a big piece of what they were doing. But he was able to figure it out in the end, and they put up the last 10 points of the game and ended up winning.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And to me, it also speaks to the importance of the quarterback position. Not that that needs to be illustrated any more clearly within the NFL, but when you have a chance to go out and get a guy that you believe completes your team. I mean, look back at the offseason and people talking about the trade for Matthew Stafford and asking 49ers fans, should the Niners have given up X number of first round picks in order to get Stafford so that he didn't go to the Rams? And 90% of 49ers fans said no, the Niners should not have given up multiple first round picks to go and get Stafford. Well, I think if you had reversed that decision and the Niners had replaced Jimmy Garoppolo with Matthew Stafford, it's possible that that would have been enough to get the San Francisco 49ers over the hump. I mean, certainly it could have been the same end result. Matthew Stafford does commit those turnovers that leave you scratching your head, but I think what he provides that Jimmy doesn't is some of those shot plays, some of those beautiful passes to offset those interceptions as well. So it to me speaks to, if you know what you need in order to get over the hump, go get it. Don't be shy. Don't be conservative. Don't hold back. If you believe you are a quarterback away from going and getting the Super Bowl, trade everything you need to get Trey Lance, right? I mean, be big. Take those big cuts at the plate. To me, that's what the Rams have illustrated with their moves to this point.
Rob, you just nailed it on the head with the difference between Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. I don't even know if you realize it. McVay had the chance to get the quarterback, and he pulled the trigger. Kyle Shanahan had the greatest quarterback outside of Joe Montana in the history of the NFL, wanted to play for his team, and he passed. And there's the difference between the legacy and Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan through 2021.
Oof,
There you go.
oof,
You just
it's
nailed it.
painful.
Look at you, glorious son of a gun, you. You nailed it. That's the difference, right? I mean, they could have had Tom Brady in 2020.
Yeah.
With Tom Brady in 2020 or 2021, the 49ers may have 2 Super Bowls over those last 2 years, maybe not. But if I feel pretty confident saying that if Tom Brady was the quarterback for the 49ers down in LA in the NFC Championship game, the 49ers win.
I think you're correct about that. And I mean, it should give 49er faithful optimism if they're believers in Trey Lance, but I understand that there's a fair percentage of folks out there that are still undecided or doubtful about his abilities. But I think if you have seen enough to be optimistic about the skill set of Trey Lance, then you can understand why the 49ers gave up what they did in order to grab him. I mean, I throw out there that had Trey Lance gone back to school, I don't think that there is any question he could have had another undefeated season. If he went back to school, if he had that undefeated season, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that Trey Lance is discussed as the consensus number 1 overall pick coming out in this draft. And then if you look at trading what the 49ers did in order to select him first overall this year, I just don't know that it's that big of a stretch. So again, as long as you can envision the skill set for Trey Lance and the progression he's going to take going forward, I think you have to feel pretty good that the Niners took that big cut. It just took an extra year to find out whether they were right about it or not.
Yeah, and I think I'm looking forward to what happens with Trey Lance, because this is the first time that we know of, at least here in San Francisco, that he is getting his guy as a head coach. Kyle Shanahan now has the quarterback that he sees as the future for him. I don't think he's ever really had that guy, unless if you believe that he didn't want RG3 in Washington.
Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, and instead he had to get Kirk Cousins, but he couldn't play him. That this is the guy that he wants. And it's going to be fun to see how this plays out, because I'm kind of with you. I do feel like they're going to have a good team next year. I think that Trey Lance is going to be fine, and Trey Lance may be the difference that helps put Shanahan right there again with McVay. I think that could be what happens, and it's going to be fun to watch it play out. Because do I feel like Trey Lance is not ready to go? No. All you got to do is look at what Trey Lance did in Week 17 against Houston. Compare that to what all the other rookies did last year against the Houston Texans, and even look at some of the other quarterbacks that went up against Houston and what they did when they played the Texans. And Lance was right there in terms of the numbers. So I think that they're ready to go, and it's going to be a lot of fun for the 49ers in 2022.
And Vegas agrees. They are climbing in the standings as the Super Bowl favorite, not favorites, but they are climbing in the standings with regard to winning the Super Bowl next year. They are now 4th overall, 2nd in the NFC behind only the Rams. And they went from, I think it was 16-1 sometime yesterday to currently about 11-1 right now with some current Vegas Super Bowl odds. So the 49ers, clearly Vegas believes this as well, that Trey Lance can take that next step, that the team around Trey Lance is good enough that if he makes that next step, if he takes that next step, that they are a Super Bowl caliber team.
Yeah, I agree, and I like that. I saw that as well, where they're the second team in the NFC in terms of likelihood to reach the Super Bowl or win it next year. I think that's about right. I think when this thing's all said and done, they're the same team as they've been, and it's going to be a fun offseason. It really kicks off today, and we'll see what happens when March 14th hits and who they start to sign or re-sign.
Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So, I know you have a big show coming up on your channel, correct?
Yes, I've got Jason Aponte on there. We are going to be going through a lot of good topics, including Jason's personal observations at the Senior Bowl and any crushes he might have on players coming out of that experience.
Nice. Yeah, so get yourself over to Rob's channel here. He's going to be going live in about 20 minutes, but a little bit less than that. Just want to say thanks to everybody for jumping on here on Monday afternoon, and for Rob to coming on doing this with me. And if you could make sure you hit that like button, click subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel, hit that little bell notification so that you don't miss when we go live. Would appreciate it. Thank you all very much for joining in on Monday for the I think we might have to call this the Hammerheads show. I think that kind of works with your sneakerheads.
I like
it.
it.
If you let me steal it away from you.
Absolutely.
But yeah, every Monday afternoon, Rob and I will be here to break it down for you. So thank you all, folks, and have a great rest of your Monday.
Cheers.